Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Magazine Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Listen, this is where we take a trip around the state of Florida. We even check in with paradise itself, Nosara, Costa Rica, and get the latest fishing report. We also get to know the guys a little bit. It's a lot of fun to get to know the best captains in each area of the state of Florida. We know who they are. We've had our Action Spotter format for 50 years now, and they fill us in as to what's going on, what they're catching, what they're using to catch fish with, and just exactly how things are done in their region. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrid boats? You want to check out youngboats.com. Let's get our trip started tonight by hopping on a jet and flying over to Nosara, Costa Rica. It'll be opening to U.S. tourists very soon, and I know somebody who will be glad to see it, Captain Craig Sutton. Craig, how are you?
Man, Ricky, I'm glad, and I am excited about them reopening. I can't wait.
Counting the days, are you?
Hoping and praying September 1.
Yep, counting the days.
We got a huge group showing up in October. I do not want to not have those guys come fish me. It's like 18 guys, 4 days of fishing on 2 different boats. So
I tell you what, you keep passing around that picture of that grander that boat caught down there a few weeks ago, and you're going to be booked up quickly. That
was a true grander, Ricky. I got to believe that fish was 1,000 pounds. I had one we put a hook to about 14 years ago that I felt like was in that class fish, but we didn't get him to like those guys did. And that was about 10 miles from our port.
How about that? That's something.
Yeah, that was Carlos, the mate, that second mate in the blue fishing the Nosara show. That's captain of Discover, Carlos. He wanted to go fishing, so they said, come on, man.
Yeah.
Look what happened.
Did that fish eat a live tuna, or what did he eat?
No, he hit a bait.
I'll be darned.
Hit us out here. Yeah.
How about that? I'll be darned.
Nice fish.
Hey, Craig, guess who called me last night?
Who?
Santa Claus.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah, he dialed me up, and he said, Ricky, I'm a little worried about Craig. I haven't gotten him anything really good for the last few years. I want to get him something really nice for his boat. What do you want me to tell him?
Well, if it can't be a new girlfriend, then I want an iPilot.
I don't know that he specializes in new girlfriends. You'll have to check that out. But so you think
he's brought me some before?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Maybe this year. Maybe you've been that good. But you think an iPilot trolling motor, huh?
I see the benefits of them, and I see guys using them more and more now. I think even you got one on your boat, don't you?
Oh, you know I do, Craig. It changed my bottom fishing overnight, forever.
That's pretty good for sure. In fact, the next boat I build, I'm going to put it on there. It's going to be a 38, and I know that's pretty big for an iPilot, but I understand they're making them now.
They are, and I got news for you. You push that button over a school of snapper or grouper, and they belong to you, Bubba. I mean,
really?
It's just that deadly. It is just that deadly. Doesn't matter what the water depth is. I use it a lot off of Stewart for catching bait, Craig. We'll get on the school of bait. You know how everybody's drifting around trying to get them. I'll just push the button and just sit there and nobody can get in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's got to be sweet. We were jigging up greenies off the North Jetty this last Saturday morning, and it was difficult because the current was pushing pretty hard. And there's a couple of those bay boats were sitting there and just had their iPilots down. They were just anchored up, man, staying right there.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Yep. Did you catch any big kingfish on those greenies?
I didn't get any.
I
couldn't get them to bite.
Okay.
I got there real early, and I understand you have to get there right when the sun pops up. But, we caught about a 15 and a 10, which, on the beach I thought was pretty good. We were around some fish that got caught earlier in the morning. We fished up there at Nassau.
Yep.
There was a bunch of fish caught there. But that you saw the results of that tournament. There was a lot of nice fish caught.
Yep, there sure
340 plus pounders.
There sure were. Hey, listen, buddy, I know guys are jonesing to go to Costa Rica. You're thinking the first week of October. Is that when you're booking?
No, I'm thinking the first week of September. But, yeah, I'm booking from October 1 on right now.
I see. But right now you could take a September trip, huh?
Yeah. Well, I'm planning on it. As soon as they open it up, I'm down there.
But, I mean, you could take a booking for September.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. People need to call you. I can promise you. Tell me how they can get a hold of you.
904-591-2161.
Or fishingnosara.com.
That's right.
Thank you, buddy. We'll talk with you next week.
Thank you, Ricky.
All right, Craigie. Let's start our trip around the state of Florida. Now that we've been to Costa Rica, we're going to start it up in the northeast corner where our friend Captain David Voorhees has always got his finger on the pulse of what's happening in northeast Florida. David, how are you?
Hey, Captain Rick, I'm doing fine, buddy. Doing fine.
Good, good. What's this? I saw a picture of you with a brook trout. Did you catch that at the jetties?
No, I got to do a little trip out to Wyoming and do some stream fishing, fly fishing, and it was quite an adventure. I tell you what we're catching here in northeast Florida, been good tarpon fishing right now. I think we're probably in the peak of our season. I've always said if you want to catch a good tarpon in northeast Florida, August is your month. There's been a lot of good reports of guys jumping as many as 6 and 7 a day. Into the jetties seem to be the ticket, Ricky. Guys are using the 7/0 circle hooks, and either a pogey or a mullet. Pogies when you can get them, but they've sort of been hit and miss, Rick, the pogies. I guess you've heard probably, you'll go out there one day and you can't find the pogey, and then, a few days later they're all over the place. How they do that is remarkable. But the guys that's been doing good on the tarpon, they've actually been, using a float rig to keep the bait up high and making very long casts, looking for where you're seeing the tarpon feeding at. 7/0 circle hooks, a good 60-pound shock leader there, fluorocarbon. And guys around here, they tend to exaggerate the size of their tarpons, but it's not uncommon right now, to get a good 70, 80, maybe even 100-pound tarpon. More inshore, we've been seeing a lot of flounder starting to stack up around the rocks, the jetties and stuff like that. So there's been some good flounder reports, pretty good sizes and a few here and there. Nothing spectacular. It's still a little early, but, the flounder will eventually start making their way to the mouth of the creeks. Trout fishing, the big trout, your best bite right now is going to be night fishing. And the key to that is going to be finding some good, clean water. And I think your best bet is going to be fishing the St. Johns River, maybe, not far from your house and areas above that. It seems like the Palm Valley area has gotten a little muddy. We've been getting a lot of rain. So a lot of the guys are saying the water's been a little muddy when you move back in the creeks. You got to find that clean water. The spawn's pretty much over with right now. So a lot of the big fish are gone. You're not going to see the big trout this time of year, but, you can get some good numbers. And to me, sometimes this time of year, right in the fall, a little bit later from now, you're going to start seeing a good numbers of trout. And to me, they seem to get real healthy. I think after the spawn, they really start feeding, putting on some more weight. This is a time of year where we used to love to fish for the schooling trout. So we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you posted on that. The red's still deep water. The best red fishing right now, most of the guys, they like fishing that outgoing tide. But this week, Rick, you're not going to get that low tide in the morning. High tide is going to be early in the morning, so you're going to get that low tide late in the evening, which means you're probably going to get ran off the water by the rainstorms. Here's what I suggest you do. Get up early in the morning and get out there just, I think, we got these low tides around 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I always say I hate that week around that new moon when we get those early, or late evening low tides. But what I like to do on this tide, on this new moon, is get up there, get around the river, either north or I like just south of the river, and I'll get along that deep edge along the intercoastal, and I will dead drift, just sort of deep jigging, but just let the current take me and let my line drift. I don't want to drift too fast so that I'm dragging my line. I want it so it's just sort of bumping on the bottom. And this is the time of year, these big bull reds, and hey, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody pulls a few 50-pounders out along that edge there, along the intercoastal at the north end, just where it empties into the St. Johns River. Now, another good flounder report, Rick, I've heard was around the inlet there in St. Augustine. Some of the docks around there are holding some decent flounder. That sort of edge there's a lot of rock in there, a lot of boulders and stuff in there, and you know how much flounder like those rocky areas.
Yeah, they do, Dave. A couple of things. First off, in my neighborhood, you recommended people go near my house to fish the lights. In my neighborhood, just within the last year, there have been some monstrosities of docks built, all of them with bright lighting. And if you haven't fished the area on Heckscher Drive east of Sisters Creek at night, you need to, because there's a lot of new houses and a lot of new lights. Now, offshore, David, I talked with Robert Johnson on the way home today. The Vermilion snapper bite was very good. He was up around the Elton bottom. They even caught some nice mangrove snapper. They had a few triggerfish and a handful of yellowtails. We continue to see lots of yellowtails. Matt Strait checked in with an 8-pound yellowtail this week. So that's crazy how those fish every year seem to push a little further north. Kingfish are good, David. The Mason's Voice tournament was over the weekend, that King of the Beach tournament, and the boats did well, catching 3 and 4 and 5 fish on the beach. Took 3 fish over 40 pounds on the leaderboard. So that's very good for this late in the summer. So all in all, our fishing has really been very good. But like you say, if our trout fishing is going to be good this time of year, you need to go at night. Hey, buddy, I really appreciate it, David. That was a great report.
All right, Ricky. Look forward to talking to you next week, and hopefully I'll have some more good news for you, buddy.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Captain David Voorhees from Jacksonville Backwater Fishing Adventures. Now let's check in with the guy who knows every fish in Mosquito Lagoon by the first name, Captain Jim Ross. Jim, are you with me?
Not only the first name, the middle name as well on most of them.
Ah, gotcha. That's good. Hey, Jimmy, how many years you been fishing Mosquito Lagoon?
I've been fishing there now since I was 12, so I'm 29.
Yeah,
so,
I was going to say, is that about 83 years then you've been fishing that lagoon?
Yeah. But I look good for 83 years old, don't I? I look damn good.
Yes, you do. You don't look a day over 82 and a half.
Good. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man, we've got this rain that's come in, and once again we're seeing a lot of algae blooms in the Indian and mosquito and banana right now, and it's really unfortunate because the water had looked so good for so long, but it has now succumbed to the inevitable, which is bringing the water, doing two things. One, bringing the storm water with fertilizers and things like that into the lagoon system, which has created the algae blooms. And two, the water table has come up. And so what happens is that when the water table comes up, the septic systems then start to not work as efficiently. And that groundwater starts to migrate sideways. I always tell people, you think of we're living on solid ground, but we really don't. What we live on is much more like a sponge. And if you took a dead, dry sponge, hard, dry sponge, and you dip the end of it in some water and then set it on the counter, within a short period of time, the whole sponge is going to be damp because that water migrates across it. And so that's what happens here in the state is that, we've got people that live 8, 10, 12 miles away from the coast that still have an effect on our lagoon system with what they do and what they put on their lawns and how their septic system is or is not working at that given time based on water table levels. So make a long story short and to bring it all back around, we've got some bright green water right now. I mean, it looks like nuclear, something or other, nuclear waste. Having said that, we still have a tarpon bite going on. As you know, tarpon are willing to put up with less than ideal conditions because they can breathe air. And so the tarpon bite in the north end of the river around the Mims and Scottsmore area is still pretty strong right now. And then also over in the Banana River, those fish that were hanging around in the Banana River around that 520 down through 40 Point and Buck Point, those fish have moved down a little to the south now, where they're down around the Satellite Beach area and Mathers Bridge, the O'Galley Causeway, the Melbourne Causeway area. The bait sort of flushed down that way, trying to find some slightly cleaner water than what we have in the central and north part of the Indian River. And so they've moved down just a little bit. So they're still here. You can still catch them. And, live baiting with filtered pogies, mullet, that all works. You can dead bait with them as well. And you will get more. You'll get a couple more bull sharks, but there are tarpon to be had. Now, with the exception of the northern Mosquito Lagoon, the trout bite's been pretty slow, and the redfish bite's been pretty slow. The guys that are oinking pigfish up around George's Bar, Hong Kong Flat, Slippery Creek, even all the way up to around to, Cedar Creek and Fox Flip and Three Sisters, they're finding trout and redfish up in those areas. So if that's what you're looking for, if that's what you're targeting, then those are the areas you want to go to. Don't go to the Indian. Don't go to the Banana. Go where the fish are, and that's where they are right now. And then nearshore bite is starting to pick back up. I just got a report just minutes ago of a guy down on the beach on Melbourne Beach casting the surf plugs in big topwater plugs and subsurface plugs into schools of tarpon that are roaming up and down the beach down there. So that an exciting thing to hear about, because we've had a couple of slow days, actually about a slow week on our nearshore bite. So good to hear that's picking back up.
Jim, did I hear you say honking pigfish?
Oinking.
Oink
your pigfish.
They're oinking pigfish. That's what they're doing. Every now
you
and
got to
then
oink your pigfish.
Every now and then you got to oink a good pigfish. You know what I'm saying?
You got to oink your pigfish. So what you do is you tail hook them with a tail hook.
Right.
A 4-aught or 5-aught size tail hook, depending on the size of the pigfish. Right now, the guys are in between. There's some of the guys are using 5-aught, some of the guys are still using 4-aught, just based on the size of the pigfish right now. But so you go and you find the mullet pods and you find areas of grass, the calorpa that the mullet are typically hanging around. You cast into there and you let your pigfish swim down. He's wanting to swim down. And then, every 30 seconds or so, you give him like a double twitch. You twitch, and you pop upwards, kind of like you were popping, let's say, a paddle tail or a curly tail jig around the edge of an oyster bar up in your neck of the woods. You pop it upwards to make it hop up. And, of course, when you do that, it points. And then it swims a little bit and then tries to dive back into the grass. And then you pop him back up again. He oinks 2 or 3 times. And that sound drives the trout and the redfish crazy, and they come to that sound.
That's outstanding. All right, talk to me about offshore, Jimmy. Anything going on out there?
It's pretty slow with the exception of the deep drop. The guys fishing in 550 to 580 feet are absolutely crushing it this past weekend. Golden Tile, Snowies, Yellow Edge. They had a really, really good deep drop bite Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of this past week.
I got you. That's outstanding. Hey, Jim, real quick, if money was no object, what is one thing you would add to your boat?
If money was no object?
Yeah.
Oh, man, it'd be nice to have a jacuzzi up there. And
No, come on. I'm being realistic.
But, so I run a 24-foot bay boat,
right,
and I run a 12-inch electronic screen on that bay boat, and I typically do not run a T-top on it. So for me, I think if there was one thing that I would say and I've had them in the past, and I'm going to put one on my next boat, one thing that I would say for the small boater who does squeeze offshore on those calm days, especially, this time of the year, XM Sirius satellite.
Bingo.
Is an invaluable tool. And the reason I say that is because I don't have a T-top with a radar to see what's coming. But with that, I can. Plus, once you get out of range of the radio station or your Wi-Fi, then you can still play, whatever you want to through your speaker system via that same XM satellite system.
Jim, let me tell you what I love so much about the XM satellite weather. You can watch the lightning strikes on it, and you can see how long ago they happened. So you can actually watch a storm build, watch it when it starts emitting lightning strikes, and then watch it as they start to fade. And that is of tremendous value. If you've got to get through a storm to get yourself home, it'll show you the path. I couldn't agree with you more, Jim. I wouldn't be without it.
Yeah. I'll tell you the other thing that's really cool on the last unit that I had, they've now developed an altimetry and water surface temperature and sea height. All of that information is available now. And so you can see where the upwellings and downwellings are. And that information for a guy who's trolling is invaluable in finding pelagics that are actively and aggressively feeding.
Sure
so that, that's probably even more important from a fishing standpoint than seeing the weather, but from a safety standpoint, that radar capability without having a radar array hanging over the top of your head is huge to me.
Great answer, Jimmy, and I can't thank you enough. Can we talk with you next week?
I look forward to it, Rick.
Thank you, buddy. We're going to pull over in Stewart, where I get to do a lot of my fishing, and check in with the captain of the Chaos and the Mayhem, Captain Jonathan Earhart. John, how are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Good deal, buddy. Tell me what's been going on first offshore of Stewart, Florida.
Seems like we're on a little bit of an uptick this week. We were struggling with bait fish there for a little bit, but it looks like we've had an influx of greenies and blue runners in our region. So kind of revitalized the sail fishing a little bit. It's made catching bait certainly pretty easy in the morning. The one thing I do notice that is different than typical summer patterns is these greenies and pilchards. They've kind of moved off the artificial wrecks, and they're kind of out in open water now, so they can be a little bit harder to locate. But, you know, when you do catch the bait fish, a lot of times you can catch sailfish, kingfish, bonita right around the bait schools while you're bait fishing. So after you catch your bait fish in the morning, sometimes you might not need to venture very far before you start fishing if you want to target sailfish and kingfish during the month of August. The bottom fishing's been pretty steady. We're catching a lot of mutton snappers right now. I seen some mutton snappers caught this week up to 30 inches. So there's definitely some big ones around. Put a live greenie on the bottom, a grunt, or sardines if you can get them. That's been very productive. Some lane snappers and mangroves mixed in as well, and plenty of big amberjacks around in the deeper water.
John, I'm hearing reports from the other side, as they call it, the other side of the Gulf Stream. I know VJ Bell has been over there. Some of the guys have. Now, are all of those guys mostly using radar to chase tuna?
Yeah, if you want to go over there and successful day catching yellowfin tuna, plain and simple, you can't do it unless you have an effective radar and you know how to locate those flocks of birds. Because if you don't find the good flocks of birds on the larger tunas, you got to be incredibly lucky. You know, I know guys that run over there with not very good radars, and their success rates are very low, 20 to 40%. And then guys that have better radars, their success rate 60 to 80%. You know, I seen a guy that went today. He caught 3 out of 6 yellowfin tunas. They were a little bit smaller. They looked like they were 20 to 30 pounds, but I've seen some fish up to 60, 70 pounds caught in the past week or two.
Whew. That's really good. What's going on inshore down there?
Inshore fishing remains the same. Good snook fishing around the St. Lucie Inlet. Bridges have been pretty good. Tarpon on the channel edges. A lot of jack crevalles mixed in as well. Some smaller mangrove snappers, and I've seen a few redfish here and there. It looks like we're starting to have a little bit of a mullet run right now, so maybe we're getting an early influx of mullet, which will definitely mean some bigger snook, bigger jacks, and bigger tarpon in our region.
That's outstanding, John. That's good. I'm a little surprised. Usually it takes like a weather event or something to start that, but you feel like they're getting ready to pull out, huh?
Yeah, you know, usually I start getting real small waves of them this part of August, and then when I get towards the end of August, you get a big run of them. If you get like another hurricane or a tropical storm that comes by, you really start seeing those larger mullet. And then in September, we'll start seeing the smaller finger mullet.
I see. Well, that's a great report, John. We appreciate the heck of it as always. Hey, I got a quick question for you. If money was no object and Santa Claus was going to bring you just one thing for either the chaos or the mayhem, what would you like to add to your boats?
I would love to have side imaging. Garmin Panoptics, I would have the best of the best, and man, I can tell you I'd be catching a lot more fish.
How about that? That's an outstanding answer. I think that's going to be the wave of the future. John, I fished with a young bass angler who had that thing mastered for the lakes that he fishes in. It's fascinating to see that stuff work.
Yeah, they were talking about outlawing it in Louisiana because it's so effective. They put it on their trolling motors, and they can go to a spot where there's triple tail, and they know exactly where to cast for the bigger fish.
Wow.
You know, and I would love to have that option on my boat in Stewart.
Yep. I got to tell you, those doggone trolling motors are so effective offshore. I'm not sure they shouldn't be outlawed. Woo! You can sit right on a spot for as long as you want to with no anchoring skill. That's pretty deadly. There's no doubt. Cap, we appreciate it as always. We look forward to talking with you next week.
Yep, as do I.
Thank you, John. Take care. Our thanks to John Earhart for a great Stewart report. Hey, we got a special treat for you tonight. We're going to swing down to Miami, which Alan Sherman's got the night off. We have got a fantastic guest podcaster joining us, none other than my very dear friend and one of the best fishermen I know, one of the finest gentlemen in the business, Captain Ray Rocher.
Hey, how are you, Rick?
I'm doing great, buddy. It's always good to talk to you. How is fishing in Miami this week?
It's good. We are catching a bonita as we speak. I got a couple little young men down there.
That's cool.
Hand cranking, and they're leadering their own fish now and gapping them, and we're having fun. But it was a beautiful day. We've had some really nice weather lately, with a lot of real calm days, a little bit of breeze in the afternoon, which is perfect if you want to put up a kite late in the day. We've actually had a few sail bites and some kingfish, and of course a lot of bonita bites on the kites in the afternoon. But the real highlight lately has been the dolphin fishing. That late season, August, September bite is usually pretty consistent, and the fish are nicer size. We don't have to measure very many fish this time of the year. And we've had quite a few, heavy lifters and gappers. Been good. I really enjoy this time of the year, quality over quantity.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, up in North Florida, we're not used to a fall dolphin run at all, but is this pretty common time of year for you guys to be catching them?
It is. For some reason, late in the summer. Usually starts around early to mid-August. We'll get a 4 to 6 week run of dolphin that'll, obviously some weeks are better than others, some days are better than others, but in general, it's better than it would be, let's say, in July here. In July, we get a lot of little tiny dolphin, maybe even late June. We get a lot of small dolphin. Kind of funny. We get some decent dolphin in the April, May time period, maybe a little bit early June. And then we get a lot of tiny ones, and sometimes a lot, sometimes a few. And then August, September is when those fish really seem to take on those extra few pounds. And, schools of anywhere from a couple fish to maybe 50 fish is a big school this time of year. But they're usually under birds in August especially. And then in September, the birds will kind of thin out a little bit. So right now is a really good time to fish for dolphin because there are birds on most of the schools of fish. The only downside is if they are not on debris. If they're on debris, they're obviously going to hang with that debris. But if they're just free roaming fish with birds over them, they're swimming to the south typically at 2 to 3 miles an hour. So kind of have to know that and stay with them. If you pull into them, hook a couple fish, and shut your boat off, they're going to just keep swimming. So that's really kind of the tip of the week on that deal.
Oh, that's a great tip, Ray. Now, let me ask you, are you ballyhoo trolling, or what are you doing to catch them?
Well, because they're moving so fast, we'll typically fish a lure spread, which is like a mahi magnet down the middle, couple little marlin lures / big dolphin lures in the riggers, and then a couple marlin lures short. And we've actually seen a few blue marlin in the last month, 6 weeks. And it's worth putting out a couple big lures. And they really act as a teaser. If you get some dolphins that come up to them, you rarely hook them. You generally just wind the big lures away from them and try to switch them over to live bait or dead bait. But then when we get near the birds or we're in a weed line, then we wind in all those lures with the exception of the feather, the mahi magnet, and then we'll fish 2 ballyhoo on a mahi magnet and shorten them up. And what happens when you shorten them up, they hop over the weed when you're in that scattered weed line, just going down it for miles. Your baits stay a lot cleaner if you'll shorten everything up. And most of the time there we're in that weed, we're looking for fish before the lures even get to them. And we try to throw a bait to them, a live cigar minnow or pilchard or something and hook them up. When you compare throwing a spinner with a live or dead bait and a trolled lure, you can never really match what catch ratio you get out of a spinning rod.
Sure.
So we always try to use the lures, the trolled rods is kind of a teaser. Yes, we do catch a few fish on them, but we're typically trying to use that to get the dolphin close enough to catch on spinners. With the spinners, you might be, let's say, 80%, 90% catch ratio, and on the trolling rods, you might be 60 or 70.
Yeah.
Just by nature, you're moving that bait fast. You get a lot of fish that are hooked kind of thin or light, and you get near the boat, they shake off. So that's part of why we try to feed them a bait.
I laugh because I'm not a very good angler, but I would put my rate of catching dolphin that eat a live cigar minnow pretty close to 100%, Cap.
Yeah, I was trying to be conservative, 80, 90. You should be around 80. You can be 80, 90 in the rod holder pretty much.
That's right. That's exactly right. Hey, it's so good to talk to you. Let me ask you a quick question. I've been on your fabulous charter boats, and I love them. But if you could add, if Santa Claus was going to bring you one thing for any of the Miss Brits, what would it be?
I would say bait tube. It's kind of funny that, like the shoemaker's kids have no shoes. I make them, and I only have them on my big boat. I need to put them on my middle and small boat, and it just takes a little bit of plumbing. I just need to take a few days off the water and run some plumbing through the decks and this and that. But the bait tubes allow us to have baits pre-rigged, whether it's for the kite, for casting at dolphin, for dropping on a wreck. It really makes us more efficient. And that bait will live in those tubes for hours. One of the guys that bought a set of tubes from us kept the blue runner overnight, 16 hours, and pulled it out, and it was still alive.
How about that?
It's not I'm not saying everything will always live that good. Runners are pretty tough, but it can keep bait for long periods of time. And it just makes you more efficient.
That's a great tip. Hey, Ray, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I sure hope we can talk to you again soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Take
you
care,
so
Rick.
much, Captain Ray Rocher from Misprint Charters. Now, let's move on down to Alamorada and check in with our buddy Nick Stancic from Broad-Minded Charters. Nick, are you with us?
How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great, buddy. I'm anxious to hear about the fishing this week in Alamorada.
We had a few good trips. I fished 3 swordfish trips, and we caught them on every trip. One trip we caught 3, and the other trips we caught 1 each trip.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Any big ones? Any keepers?
Yeah, what did we do? We caught a couple of them. We released the rest of them. Nothing big, nothing huge, nothing over about 80 pounds, but a couple of eaters, and we tagged and released a couple. And had some bottom fish too, like some barrelfish, some rosies, and had some mahis and 1 small wahoo one day as well.
Cool. Now, when we talked last week, you guys were having a really good mahi bite for August. Is that still going on?
Yeah, there was a couple of slower days, like where it's a little bit better further south of us for 2 or 3 of the days, but then today a lot of boats limited out again and had 30 or 40 fish. Overall, so good. There was a couple of days it was a little slower, but overall, still pretty good, I would say.
Good deal. Outstanding. Anything on the backcountry, Nick?
My brother fished in the backcountry a few days the past week, and I know one day he had some snook and he had a couple triple tail, and one of them was a whopper at 15.2 pounds.
15.2 is an outstanding triple tail. That is a really, really good one. All right, Nick, how many trips in a row have we caught swords now? What do we stand at?
4.
4. We're 4 on our way to 20. All right, buddy, look.
All right,
I hope we can check in with you next week.
Sounds good. Give us a call. We'll be here, all right?
Thanks so much, Nick. We appreciate it. Let's pull over to 10,000 Islands. I'm dying to find out what's going on each one of those islands from the mayor of 10,000 Islands, Steve Dahl. Steve, are you with us?
I am. How you doing today, Rick?
Never better, Cap. Tell me what's going on.
The things we've been talking about, at least on the inshore side. This weekend we had a really good charity redfish tournament out of the Goodland area, and it proved that our redfish bite is definitely early this year. And, we kind of talked a little bit about that last week, but the redfish is just fantastic. Lots of fish at the top end of the slot. Quite a few fish over 30 inches caught in that tournament, which is just dynamite. We usually don't see that till October. A couple years back, we had a spell like this where it lasted right through, mid-November. So I'm crossing my fingers that we have an extended, quote-unquote, red October. So can pretty much catch them on anything. They're all on the outside points. Make a nice milk run at the higher tide stages, whether it's incoming or outgoing, and you're going to catch them. It's pretty much that simple. Mixed in, you're going to have your snook with it, and then in the deeper holes adjacent to those outside points, you can trout fish. So you can make short order on the inshore side pretty good.
Yeah, I talked with Greg Stamper, and he said the tarpon in his area did not bite as well this week as he wanted them to. Has that kind of been your experience?
Well, our juvenile tarpon are still doing really, really well just because of those rains. That helps that water flow that much more. So when that current's going and they get that runoff from the afternoon rain, those juvenile tarpon just get fired up. Fired up. So we haven't really seen the adult. Our fall wave of adult fish really hasn't come, and I think a lot of it's because our bait hasn't gotten here yet, and it's still a little too early. So.
Steve, what's your go-to method on juvenile tarpon? What are you fishing with?
My deal is always dark, like purple, blacks, or a combination of the two, and we kind of learned that from our fly fishing friends. Forever and a moon, that black and purple has been a tried and true pretty much through the Keys, all the way through the 10,000 Islands and beyond. Depending on how big they are or how active they are, I'll throw anywhere from a 3.5 to a 5-inch purple or black and blue paddle tail swim bait. I'll rig it on a simple 1/4 ounce jig head. If I'm going to the 5-inch, I like a little bit longer shank, and you got to be a little careful. You're going to need a little bit stouter hook so you don't bend those out. Those work fantastic. I like those dark colors for those, backcountry fish because that water still is tannic, but yet it's also going to be a little bit darker because of that runoff. Contrary to what most people think, those darker hues actually show up better in dark water than a bright colored bait.
So, and mostly soft paddle tails, huh?
Yeah, I like that soft, that soft plastic paddle tail. I'll throw in, a soft plastic jerk bait here and there, but for the most part, I like those paddle tails. So
that's outstanding. Hey, I got one quick question for you. Santa Claus called me the other night, and he said, Steve Dahl has been the best guy in all the 10,000 Islands this year, and I'm not sure what to get him for Christmas. What would he want for his boat?
I'm getting to the point where I would love a tower on my boat. And I have a T-top. I would, I have all the bells and whistles. I got the power poles, the good electronics and the good trolling motors. And, I've been through all that, but I really think not even a full tower, just kind of a half tower. Number one, I'm kind of short and, that would aid a little bit, but I love, Rick, me, I love to sight fish, and I spend a great majority of my winter sight fishing triple tail, and that would probably help me out and put things in a little bit different perspective. And as I'm aging, my eyesight's going. So it would probably help me a little bit if I was elevated, but I would definitely think a tower, I think that would be something I would really like.
Steve, I've got one on my 27 Young, and I never come out of it. I'm up there just about all day long. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, it really does change your perspective.
It really does. Well, I tell you, we've been fighting just mats of sargassum this year, and I've been able to climb up there and see the holes. Oh, wait a minute, there's a half an acre over there that I can set out in, and it's just been a huge help. Cap, as always, we appreciate it so much, Steve. Please tell me we can talk to you next week.
Of course.
All right, buddy. Thanks, Captain Steve. Now, let's move up to Southwest and check with Captain Greg Stamper. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Rick. How are you?
I'm glad to talk to you, buddy. Tell me how the week's been in Southwest Florida.
All right. I'll start with some crazy stuff that you'll appreciate. Some of the offshore guys that went out a little further than normal this week when they were able to. Did very well, but most of the action and the good fishing was in the afternoon. So these guys are getting out there. They're leaving the docks later in the afternoon, 2, 3, 4 o'clock. They're going out there 40, 50, some of them 60 miles plus, and their bite has been very good in the evening. The guys who've been doing the early morning stuff have kind of felt like the tides and the water just isn't really moving real good for them out there, and they've kind of struggled a bit when they've been inside of about 110, 120 feet. Now, those guys who did go out there offshore, and they did a lot of chumming early for about an hour for them big snappers, caught a lot of mutton snappers, some really nice mangrove snappers. Nothing bigger than about 7 or 8 pounds as far as the mangroves go. The muttons were quite nice. They were probably, I don't know, the ones I saw 12, maybe 13, 14 pounds, which is a solid mutton. But 2 sailfish were caught in my neck of the woods this week.
Ta-da!
For those that did go out there far.
How about that? That's outstanding stuff. Hey, Greg, when the guys are chumming muttons over there, what are they chumming with?
So they're really trying to go out there and go after these big mangrove snappers, okay? A lot of these guys are going out and doing their own thing where they go out and they catch a bunch of thread fins or whitebait or whatever may be around, and they're chumming it up and grinding it up themselves. Some of them add their little special sauce. I mean, everybody's got their own little trick. But the guys who did very well were the ones that went out there and chummed for about an hour, and they brought a couple bags of those small thread fins that they didn't cut up and use for chum, and they slowly dispersed those over that course of an hour. Most of these guys, though, Rick, they're going out there and they're not even dropping a line in the water until they've chummed for over an hour.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. If we did that on my coast, we'd have 10,000 sharks behind us.
They did note there were a few issues with some sharks, but for the most part, I mean, the fish I saw come back, I only saw a couple with bite marks, and I'm not sure how many got, completely taken, but they did quite well. Now, moving a little bit closer, there are some mangrove snappers that are inside of that 60-foot range. These are not big fish. These are like 10, I don't know, I'd say anywhere from a pound to maybe 3 pounds. But they've done well with them this week. Those people are not chumming full speed, because if they do chum in those areas in our neck of the woods, you're going to deal with a bunch of sharks. They've had a lot of problems, though, with a lot of these G-fish, fly troopers that have been, coming in there and getting in their way and picking off these fish. So they've had to move around a little bit, but they've done well on top of that with a couple other things. One called a cobia. I've seen a few of those come in this week there. And they caught quite a few permit. Most of those guys are releasing them all. But they've done pretty well on the permit for those that have crabs out.
That's outstanding. That's absolutely outstanding. Now, you were having a big time last week when we talked with juvenile tarpon. Is that still going on?
I might have jinxed myself a little. I was hoping that we could maybe talk tomorrow so I could add 3 or 4 more to my list because, quite honestly, it was a kind of a dud week for my juveniles. We did 2 or 3 trips where we only got into 1 or 2 each day. And, you know, I mean, if you jump 2 and you might catch 1 if you're lucky. But yesterday and today, the fishing did pick up. We went 2 for 3 a day, and we went, hopefully tomorrow, it'll be one of these 4 to 5 fish days because they seem to start turning on as we got further into this week. So I was a little confused. We had some really good tides for what I thought was going to be fantastic for some of these schools, and they just didn't want to cooperate. I have a feeling right now they're so dialed in on this tiny rain bait we have. I mean, it's so thick. You can see it everywhere we're fishing for them. And we've got tarpon rolling. But I think they're just so fired up on these tiny, tiny little baits. I didn't have anybody this week that wanted to throw flies, and that might have been a ticket.
Yep, that would do it. And, you know, all fish are funny. They do that. I see that with tuna, Greg. I see it with so many fish. If they get dialed in on those little bitty baits, nothing we can throw is going to be small enough to get them.
No, I agree with you. And even the small glass minnows and stuff that are around, there's a couple pods, you'll see them, of these smaller things, you know, the real dark pods. And it must be a 1/4 inch or not even maybe a 1/2 inch long. And I think even those little tiny, tiny baits are going after the really tiny baits. And the tarpon are just like, listen, if this thing gets anywhere near me, I'm just going through there with my mouth wide open. And I'm just going to eat these things for the next couple days. But we'll see how that pans out. I can tell you that the red fishing got pretty good this week. We caught some nice fish. Again, all these fish have been in the upper slot to near over slot. And I'm still not seeing those little juniors, which I normally would be seeing this time of year. So that concerns me a little bit because that'll be, you know, next year's or the year after type of fish. But who knows? It may just be one of those things where these fish maybe are out there somewhere else. I'm going to start catching them. They're going to be real silver because they're coming into the bay for the first time. Now, we did, in a real happy note, catch some nice trout this week when we weren't even trying for them. In fact, we caught these fish when we were tarpon fishing with live, you know, we were using a lot of white baits that were 2, 3, 4 inches, and we caught some really nice trout. Very healthy, really fat. And I'm just hoping that they just get another spawn or something in there so that that'll help us out next year when it's, you know, back in.
I tell you what, that's fantastic and a great report. As always, we appreciate the heck out of it, Greg. Can we talk with you next week?
Yeah, no problem at all. I may be heading down to the Keys about time you call me, but I'll be ready for you.
Oh, yeah? What you headed down there for?
Oh, I have a good client of mine who wants me to run his boat down there and wants to go catch some of these fish called mahi. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll have a good time doing it with him.
Fake it. You'll get right through it. Don't worry about it. They're not very smart. They're not very smart anyway. Thanks, Greg. We'll talk next week, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right. Sideline.
Now, keep in mind, Greg and all of our action spotters are brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrid boats? You want to check out youngboats.com.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, you know, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Now let's come on up I-75 a little bit, and we'll stop in the West Central region and check in with our buddy Ray Markham. Ray, how are you?
Oh, Captain, I'm doing just fine.
I'm glad. I am proud to hear that, my brother. Tell me what's going on in the West Central area of Florida.
Bunch of guys had a magnanimous week for tarpon, and they're just kind of making a resurgence again. I don't know exactly where they're telling me these things are, but, you know, you can't only just trust a few. but apparently the tarpon bite was real good this week. Most of it was inside Tampa Bay from what I've heard. And typically this time of year, they go well up in the bay, hit the bridges, whether it's Howard Franklin, Courtney Campbell Causeway, the Gandy Bridge, the old Bayside Bridge way up there in upper Old Tampa Bay, and they hang around in that deeper water down there. Guys are catching them, fishing dead shad on the bottom, a few of them catching them on crab. But I did hear about some guys that were fishing out by Egmont on the ripper and outgoing tide, coming off the new moon here, and did exceptionally well catching some tarpon. So it's been pretty good all around from what I'm hearing for this time of year. Usually this time of year, things are just, you know, fish here and fish there. So they've all gone out and done their spawning and whatnot. But other things inside the bay has been just lit up with Spanish mackerel. Guys that are trolling, casting jigs, I mean, they're getting a lot of cut-off. Some of them are throwing a little bit heavier mono or fluorocarbon on, anywhere from 30 to 40 pound test, and put an extra long shank hook on there with a sardine or even with jigs, and they're doing really, really well with Spanish. And most of the fish are running around 2 to 4 pounds, so they're decent fish.
Gotcha.
So what else we got? We got plenty of gag grouper stuff going on. Guys that are getting out typically are doing the best with gags out between 120 and 160. This week is the All Salt Loop Tournament. It will be starting, I believe, on Thursday, and they kind of come back and wind it all up Saturday, Sunday. Typically, that's, you know, an all-billfish event with some fun fish involved, and that would be tuna, dolphin, and wahoo added on there. So it's always a spectacular event. There's not usually hundreds of boats, or, you know, like there is with the Kingfish tournaments, but the boats that are out there, probably one of them could buy about a dozen Kingfish boats. But they're pretty nice boats. And there's a lot of go-fast boats that are starting to get into this as well. Whereas in the past, they've had these boats that are, you know, running 15 knots, 20 knots, the pacemakers, the Hatteras, whatever, trying to get out to, you know, 60 to 100 miles offshore. But you get in some of these go-fast boats there now, and with decent weather, they can get out there in a few hours.
Sure.
So it's going to be a great week coming up. This weekend should be real good. There's still plenty of snook in the passes if guys want to go out there and do a little catch and release. I understand that the scalloping on the north end of the West Central region has been a little slow. They've been kind of spread out, but still, it's not a bad deal when you can go out there and just jump in the water and cool off a little bit and then go catch a few redfish.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, Cap, I promise you. Good time of year to jump in the water. Keep an eye on that Old Salt Loop tournament for us, if you would, and let us know how they made out next week.
Will do.
All right, Cap, we appreciate it.
All right, go vote.
Thank you, Ray. Now let's get one of my favorite reports each and every week from the mayor of Homosassa in the Big Bend, Captain William Toney. William, how are you?
Doing good. Just wrenching everything out, wringing out some water, bailing out the boat, and all that good stuff that comes along with a good August thunderstorms.
William, do you have a towel? Can you get yourself dried off? Are you okay on towels?
You know, sometimes it don't matter because I'm looking and there's a break in the clouds and it's about to get real sunny and just drenching sweat. So, you know, it don't even matter.
Yep. I know it, Cap. Tell me how the fishing is out of Homosassa.
Well, right now, our inshore bite has been good on the redfish, but the really cool part about it, it's the mangrove snapper. And I'm not talking, you know, the big 20-inch ones or anything like that, but the 12 to 14-inch ones in anywhere from 3 to 8 foot of water on good live bottom, like a natural rock. And sometimes even on big high tides on our points that have limestone bottom, just free line and live shrimp has been really good and consistent. And they're such fun fish to catch. I think they're very smart, and it's really why I like to catch them. But they also eat well. So that's kind of been like our best inshore bite, and then supplemented with some redfish. And if we had a day like today, just overcast conditions with some wind, we had southwest pretty much all day, we've been getting a good trout bite. But if you're out there and it's a sunny day with no wind, forget about the trout, target mangrove snapper, go for reds on the incoming tide.
Aha. And if I caught a couple of mangrove snapper with you in the morning, what are the chances that I could get a shore lunch with some guava jelly on my bread? Because I saw that on Facebook, William. That wasn't fair to put that up there.
I know. It wasn't, but, you know, sometimes, you know, you just have to put it out there.
Ooh.
And the guava jelly thing, actually, I did a shore lunch for a good client of mine. His son turned 25, so I took him and 3 of his buddies out, and we caught mangrove snapper, redfish, and a few trout, and came back in at his shore lunch at his dad's house, and I stuck a candle right in the middle of a hush puppy with guava jelly on it, you know, just for him.
You know, the funny thing is, I took a charter with you, and we got back to the ramp and you said, thanks a lot, guys, I'm out of here.
You got to work up to it, Rick. You know, you got to get the street cred going here, but
I didn't get no hush puppy. I did get a jar of guava jelly, which is
you did. See,
it is long since empty, Cap. It has been gone.
I know. It's guava season here in Homosassa, and it's growing really good. My father, you know, he has the best trees. So what we figured out over the years, if you got guavas, what you got to do, if you're going to make the jelly, you got to peel them before you can squeeze and juice them.
Uh-huh.
And before we would pick them and put them in the freezer. And if you weren't careful, especially at my dad's house, and you open the freezer out there in the back room, they'd fall out like a cue ball right on the end of your foot. So it's best now. We figured to peel them first, then freeze them, let it thaw. You got to get out there. You look like a witch out there in the yard, stirring the brew, squeezing it. And you got to strain them. There's a lot of small little flat seeds in there. You got to get out. And the main thing about guava, and everybody who's probably listening that has knowledge about guava, they're just not a fruit you just pick off the tree and eat. It's basically the juice. And I don't know, my mom and my aunt, they got the top secret, and I've threatened them to put them in there like in a sweatshop and make them mass produce it. But we can't. We're just a family, and we share it with shore lunches and good friends like you.
Here's my secret of guava jelly. It's gone. I ate it all. Cat William, we appreciate the heck out of it. Thanks so much for your report each and every week. Can we talk to you next week?
I'll be right here in downtown Homosassa.
Thank you, William. Take care.
All righty. Bye-bye.
I love that guy. Our thanks to Captain William Toney for a great Homosassa report where he says it's guava season and they're putting up guava jelly. Let's pull up into the Northwest and check with our buddy with KC Charters, Captain Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Captain Rick, I'm doing great. Standing out here enjoying a nice summer evening.
Ah, outstanding. Did it get stormy there today?
It did not get stormy. The fish gods were looking out for us for the first 2 days of scallop season up here.
Oh, good deal. How's the scalloping?
It's wonderful. We got a limit yesterday, and we cleaned the scallop and had a nice batch for dinner last night.
That's an outstanding report. What's going on with the grouper? Are they biting?
Grouper bite's been slow. We had a few days off this week since it's post-snapper season. After catching that Mongo king mackerel when I talked to you last week, we had a little bit slower week. We got a bunch of vermilions and, a few more king mackerel. but the grouper bite has definitely slowed down. We had 3 on one trip last week, some nice reds and a gag, but the vermilion keep getting bigger, which amazes the heck out of me.
Yeah, you told me your vermilions over there are monsters.
Yeah, they are. Every once in a while we say, well, that's the biggest vermilion I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then the next day we're going, that's the biggest vermilion I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, one of my commercial buddies came in the other day with a 9-pound yellowtail. Is that a big one?
Oh, that's a big one. That sounds about like our vermilions are looking right now.
Come on now. You ain't caught no 9-pound vermilion.
No.
Let's not get carried away.
No, I'm not getting carried away. I'm just giving it for comparison.
But you say you've had some 5s, huh?
We've had some 5s and 6s, definitely.
Wow. Those are huge vermilion.
They are.
Have you heard anything from inshore at all?
No, inshore is still a little bit slow. A lot of concentration has been offshore, and not much pressure here right now. A lot of the Georgia kids are going back to school, and the Florida kids are, and so, it kind of slows things down around here. So we take an opportunity to do some fun things ourselves. We're actually going deep drop fishing on Saturday, so we're looking forward to that. But inshore, I really don't have a report for you this week.
That's outstanding, other than the scallops, which are good. So you've had an outstanding week, and I'm glad to hear you get some time off. I think we're all ready for life to return to normal just a little bit.
I'm waiting to see what that normal looks like after we're done.
It's going to be different. Yep, it's going to be different.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes, sir.
But
Yes, sir.
A certain past president got elected for his second term, and I walked out on the dock to have coffee with my daddy that morning, as was my custom, and I was so upset because I was not a supporter of his, and I'm just like, Daddy, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what we're going to do. And he said, son, I believe some days the fish will bite, some days not so much. that's kind of what we got to remember whenever the new normal's like, Kevin. Some days they're going to bite for us, and some days they're not.
Very true. Very true.
Cap, it's always good talking to you. We really appreciate your report, and I look forward to speaking with you next week.
Hey, we'll be back next week. I think we've got 4 trips this week, so we'll have a lot to talk about next week.
Hey, it's always great checking in with Kevin Lanier, getting his report. And keep in mind now, Kevin and all of our action spotters are brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Now let's head on out into the Panhandle, and that's where Tyler Massey is. Captain Tyler, are you with us?
I'm here, Rick. How you doing?
Buddy, I'm doing great. It's good to talk to you. How's your offshore fishing been this week?
So this week we had a white marlin shootout, little white marlin tournament up here in the northern Gulf, and fishing was a little slow, but we still had boats that caught multiple white marlins. We had a decent tuna weighed in, 125 pounder. There was some wahoo and some dolphin caught. So they said it wasn't red hot fishing, but I mean there's definitely some fish around.
Oh, cool. How many marlin got caught for the tournament? Do you know?
I think we had somewhere around 9 billfish caught, mostly white marlin. It's a little slower than normal, but some boats did well and other boats didn't do so good. So maybe it was spot specific.
Oh, Cap, that's not bad at all. I mean, that's absolutely outstanding. I'm proud to hear it. Have you heard anything from the inshore area for you?
Yeah, so inshore fishing, this time of year we kind of get into the groove of targeting mangrove snapper, Spanish mackerel, flounder, starting to move around a little bit, and also a few redfish around. So as we get later into the month into September, that inshore fishing is just going to get better and better for us over here. It's not super red hot. It's not like you can go out and probably catch them all day long, but you can find some good bites here and there. It's been pretty decent for our guys inshore. Okay.
You hear anything from the grouper fishermen?
Yeah, we're continuing to go out there, and we have some really nice weather. It's been on a good run in nice weather, so we're still hitting the rocks and 220 to 290 foot, catching those scamps and catching a few gags here and there, and it's been pretty decent. So good live baits are helping with that. We use live pinfish, cigar minnows, or scaled sardines. People call them pilchards or greenies or whatever. Same thing we have up here. So that's been what we've been going out there with, fishing live baits on the bottom. On the rocks, and we're catching some decent fish for sure.
That's great. I tell you, for the dog days of summer, that's a fine report, especially 9 marlin for your little shootout there. Now, was that a 2-day tournament or a 1-day?
Yeah, it was a 2-day tournament. So
Gotcha.
2 fishing days or like 1.5 fishing days, I guess you'd say.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, that's a great report, Tyler. Thanks so much for it. Tell me we can talk to you next week.
I'll be here.
Hey, that wraps up our trip around the state tonight. And gosh, it was a good report. David Boris, he was focusing on trout at night. You get down into the East Coast around the central area. Jim Ross said the tarpon are still biting, although he's very concerned about water quality as all this fresh water is getting dumped into the Indian Lagoon. That can't be a good thing. Captain Jonathan Earhart said the bait in his area is on the move. They're not holding to the artificial wrecks and reefs. You just got to kind of find it out free roaming. But there's been some free roaming sailfish around it, which is wonderful. Hey, it was great to check in with Captain Ray Rocher from R&R Tackle. He said they're having a strong mahi bite in Miami right now, and that is great news. Said they're catching some nice fish. There's some kings to go with him. In fact, he was fighting a bonito while he was talking with me. Had 2 young anglers downstairs, so what a great fresh report from Ray. You get down further into Alamorada, and Nick Stanzik has started another streak. He's on 4 days of swordfish now. He's caught 3 one day and 1 each of the other 3 days, so he's back on his streak again and happy to be there. I tell you what, you come around into the 10,000 Islands, Steve Dahl and even on up through Greg Stamper, they weren't quite as happy with their juvenile tarpon as they thought they would be. Steve said his were pretty good. Greg said his were a little slow, but he's looking for them to pick up next week. We'll see. Come on up through William Toney. William Toney's always on fish. He's on redfish and scallops and shore lunches right now. And folks, if you've never been to Homosassa, lower your blood pressure, go over there and enjoy a day of pure relaxation. Headed on out into the Panhandle. That's where Tyler Massey said the white marlin are biting. They had 9 whites in the tournament they had over the weekend. The leading boat had 3. They also had some tuna, some wahoo, and some dolphin. So all in all, for me, it was a surprisingly good week. We didn't have any real adverse weather other than thunderstorms this week. But for the whole state of Florida, it was a pretty doggone good week. We'll take it for this 3rd week of August. September is going to be here with the northeaster soon enough, but let's enjoy it while it's calm. I'm Captain Rick Riles, and if you've enjoyed tonight's podcast, gosh, we sure hope you subscribe. We sure hope you download it every week, and we'd love for you to give it to your no-good buddy who never catches any fish. Maybe we can help him too. Until next week, for Florida Sportsman Magazine Action Spotter Podcast, I'll see you on the rip.